Okay, so the law of phase harmony is based on non-commutative quantum non-locality from frequency, and this is explained by Fields Medal math professor Alon Khan in his talk Music of Shapes. And so the truth of music is the non-commutative quantum sphere that has a geometric dimension of 0. So I will be reviewing how this is connected to quantum biology as a alchemical meditation training. So here we have the secret source of Yoda from Star Wars. George Lucas, there should be R there. He went to Shaolin and he met Qigong master Haidang, who you can see here doing a full lotus or a one finger handstand. And so this is the real Yoda, the real source of Yoda. And of course this is demonstrating anti-gravity for him to be able to hold up his body with just one finger. Now, in traditional Chinese music tuning, the perfect fifth is yang, and in alchemy it's called the single perfect yang. So as you build up the yang shen, you increase the frequency of the light, but also you convert the undertone from the future as a quantum beat, and this is due to the non-commutativity as non-locality. So even though these are both the perfect fifth, the overtone is 3/2 as C to G, and the undertone is 2/3 as F to C, while the C would be the 1 as the fundamental tone. And as Alon Khan explains, the point in space-time is actually derived from a chord as a 2-note frequency as a correlation of 2 frequencies. So in fact this would be just this overlapping of the future and the past with no geometric distance, as just a non-locality based on the speed of light. So this would be a superluminal non-locality from the frequency, the negative frequency and the positive frequency overlapping. And Roger Penrose relies on this non-commutativity of negative and positive frequency to explain the Hawking radiation that then exists before the Big Bang from a negative entropy as a non-locality that's also gravitational potential or anti-gravity. So when this was converted into the Western scale, this was the secret origin of commutative geometry, and they had to use an X for the fundamental tone so that the subharmonic as the 2/3 is actually what creates the perfect fourth as 4/3, which would be the C to F in the same scale. But the problem is that the 4/3 is never a natural overtone of the C, so that's why you have to have this X. So just this simple diatonic 7-note scale is actually already assuming an irrational magnitude of commutative geometry. And this originated from Philaeus. So what he did was he actually used two fundamental tones by flipping his musical instrument around the lyre, and the 4/3 was then created from 0 to 8 as the root tonic for a 6 to 8 ratio of 4/3, and then the 3/2 was created from 8 to 12, from a 0 to 12 fundamental tone. So then by covering up the flipping of the lyre with the two different fundamental tones, then you have the very first logarithmic equation of the perfect fourth plus the perfect fifth as 4/3 plus 3/2 from this 8/6 plus 12/8. But in fact, it is derived from two different root tonics or fundamental tones. So you're actually changing the scale by hiding the non-commutativity, and that's how Philaeus created the very first commutative geometry from music theory. And so the actual truth of music theory, as Alon Khan explains, is this geometric dimension of 0 with an infinite spiral of perfect fifths going in both directions as an undertone and overtone at the same time. And this is from an early quantum physicist, Sir James Jeans, in his book Science and Music. And as he explains, the true clock face extends to infinity in both directions, and all simplicity has disappeared. So from this very simple intuitive notion, as Alon Khan explains, you have an infinity of infinite dimensions as a single perfect yang in Taoism. And so as Alon Khan explains, then the transposition of the scale, of the range of the scale, is from the 3 as a ratio, but it's non-commutative. So you have 3 halves as the perfect fifth interval, or else it's 2/3 as the undertone. So then this is showing both directions as overtone and undertone, and the octaves no longer line up. And so you have 3 to the 12th approximates 2 to the 19th, which is actually from 3 halves to the 12th, and then by assuming the logarithm you add, it would be 2 to the 7th, but then you add it as 2 to the 19th. And so when you, since it's 3 halves, it has to be divided back into the same scale. So then you get 2 to the 1/12th approximating 3 to the 1/19th. And the reason why it's 2 to the 7 for the octave is that the 3 halves, the 7th note is the perfect fifth in the chromatic scale, and so that's the basis of the connection between the 7 octaves that are then divided back into the 12-note scale. So that means that it has a geometric dimension of 0 that's more dense than the real number continuum of space-time, and it's equivalent to the quantum non-commutative sphere as a non-commutative torus. So here we have the non-commutative torus, and so you have this overlap between the 12-note scale. The chromatic notes is actually existing in this 5th dimension, and this is the equivalent of 1/2 spin. So with 1/2 spin, it takes 720 degrees to get back to your starting point in order to observe the matter, the foundation of matter. And so the truth of matter is actually made of light from the photon that then has this negative and positive frequency. And this is what makes up the electron, is the 1/2 spin is actually due to this non-locality as an instantaneous action at a distance in the 5th dimension. And that's what this overlap means, is you cannot see the 5th dimension. So this is again the non-commutative torus that Alan Khan relies on. So at each 0 point in space-time, you have this quantum block sphere of the negative and positive frequency overlapping for the 1/2 spin. So there's a twist in the torus that you can't see, and that's what this is explaining. There's this twist of the 5th dimension, and this is the same donut design non-commutative torus that my quantum physics professor Herbert J Bernstein used for his quantum super dense teleportation satellite system that he designed for NASA for their so because it entangles the photon both with the polarization and also the orbital angular momentum, as the helicity of the light So you can think of if you flip the torus, it's not symmetric, whereas if you flip a sphere, it is symmetric. So that's why the torus, when you flip it, you're on the inside or the outside, and that's what is describing this non-commutative dynamic that you don't get with just the sphere. So then when you have that 12-note scale, it's then applied to the body as meditation. And I have a book about this called The Ancient Advanced Acoustic Alchemy. And this is an example from the Veena in India. And it was inspired by the 24 cartilage in the spine, and which approximates the hours of the day. So you have the 12, then the 12 notes along the body and the mind that are found in Kriya Yoga as alchemy are based on the 2-hour cycle. And you find that same practice in China in Taoist alchemy. It's called the microcosmic orbit or small universe meditation. And that's what it's also found in Pythagorean training as the circulation of light that Gurdjieff discusses. So this is the foundation of the practice, is that you visualize light and you synchronize it with your breathing. And the Chun Yulin, he sells his Spring Forest Qigong small universe meditation. It's all based on this secret. And there's also a book called Taoist Yoga, Alchemy, and Immortality. And it's all based on this 12 notes as the body-mind transformation using spirit that then resonates this non-commutative, non-locality. And so we find also in China, they have the same use of the vertebra to mean the musical instrument, and that the Chinese character for happiness also means music, just by changing the pronunciation of the Mandarin word. And so here you have once again, you have the non-commutative torus as a 720-degree spin with the flip. So if you think at every 0 point in space-time, this is actually practice this is the secret of the alchemy training, where the whole body and the mind relies on the 12 meridians or energy channels that in India are called prana. So you have the 5 types of electricity linked to the 7 chakras, and then aligned with the 12 energy channels. So in this case, the outside of the hand is yang, the inside is yin, and then the upper body is yang and the lower body is yin. So you're aligning the yin with the yang of the hand, the yin of the lower body, and the yin of the hand with the yang of the upper body. And this was discovered by Eddie Oceans when he worked at Stanford Linear Accelerator Center. As a quantum physicist, he coined the phrase quantum psychology, and he called it self-referential motion as the secret of the Tao. And he also taught Wing Chun, and he said the whole secret of internal martial arts as Neigong is due to non-commutativity. And he worked with math professor Lou Kaufman, and then Eddie Oceans referred to the Bernstein-Susskind-Aronoff effect, which was named after my quantum physics professor Herbert J Bernstein, who did the Bell inequality experiments demonstrating the non-locality of the neutron due to the 1/2 spin, based on the same 720-degree Dirac dance. So here we have Nobel physicist Roger Penrose giving his talk on the non-commutative precognition as a quantum superposition that then retroactively collapses to a matter with mass as a particle. So this is just another example of he relies on the non-commutativity of positive and negative frequency, and he says this is going on in our minds all the time, and if we're resonate with it, we can experience precognitive visions. This is what Roger Penrose talks about. You can see he's right here giving his talk. So that's from his YouTube talk on the Science of Consciousness YouTube channel. So here, this is from math professor Lou Kaufman, who made this video, and he was collaborating with Eddie Oceans, who's no longer alive, but Lou Kaufman is still alive, and I've corresponded with him. And so here, yeah, this is actually a dancer she's doing a Bali wine dance, but this is what I learned in my first year, my quantum physics class that I took from Herbert J Bernstein. So you can see the wine glass never spills, stays upright. And this proved Einstein wrong. Okay, so here we have the quantum biology. So you have this, the whole point of the non-commutativity is it exists before space-time, so it's in pre-space. And so you have this eternal process. Oops, I skipped ahead to here. Let me do this one first. So when you rely on meditation as quantum biology, you're relying on this secret of listening instead of visual perception. And the whole key secret again is that when we rely on the Fourier analysis of visual perception, it's assuming a linear operator of time and frequency. And so you can see here the amplitude and the time. When they get phase shifted, there's a significant change in the amplitude. But when we listen to it, we hear no difference, because they're both the perfect fifth as the undertone or the overtone that got changed based on the phase shift, but our ears don't hear the difference, because our ears are able to hear up to 10 times faster than Fourier uncertainty. So I call this I was calling it the hempel effect as a joke, but it was a long debate between Helmholtz and Koenig, and even now they try to dismiss it as just like a recording, what do you call it, just a after effect from a recording signal. But this again, like if you, in the traditional Indian music tuning, if you have a drone with the perfect fourth being a higher note, they understand that actually creates a new fundamental tonic that's below the original root tonic, so it's a perfect fifth below. And this is called the Phantom Tonic by a prominent Western music theorist, because since the 4/3 as a pitch ratio can never be a natural overtone of the fundamental tonic, because in order to be a natural overtone it has to maintain the same fundamental tone in the denominator. So when you have 3 and the denominator is 4/3, then it's not possible for it to be an actual natural overtone, and that's why it's derived from the non-commutative undertone of the perfect fifth. And so you have this eternal process of energy creation that's actually faster. It's faster than the conversion of time and frequency that has to occur when you have a phase shift of amplitude and time in the Fourier analysis. So this shows that meditation is actually the highest technology of any technology, because you're able to bypass the time frequency uncertainty and resonate directly with the future and the past through the frequency of the negative frequency as an undertone. So again, this is going on through the non-commutative non-locality, and so this shows the what Roger Penrose calls proto-consciousness from Bernard de Espinay, who was another quantum physicist. And essentially you have this active information that's guiding matter from the future, because once again all matter is actually made of light, but the light has gravitational mass because it inherently has this relativistic asymmetric time shift that Louis de Broglie discovered as the law of phase harmony. So in order to claim that the light has a zero rest mass, you have to assume that you can contain the light in a box and then average the center of mass as a symmetrical rest frame. But because the light is measured by the momentum that's directly proportional to the quantum frequency, therefore the frequency is inherently asymmetric. And this originates again from the music theory, because as Louis de Broglie realized, as a particle goes towards the speed of light, then the time also gets bigger as the frequency gets bigger. And so logically, since frequency is inverse to time, so if you have an octave of a frequency of 2 to 1, then the time is 1/2 as a wavelength. So if the time is getting bigger, that logically that means there has to be a negative frequency with the time reverse signal from the future, and that's what this the phase velocity is when you multiply the wavelength of the particle with the frequency of the particle the internal quantum frequency. Is you get this phase velocity that's superluminal. It's the speed of light squared divided by the frequency, or it might be the de Broglie wavelength, and then the de Broglie wavelength is the momentum, the Planck's constant times the speed of light divided by the wavelength, and so, or the momentum. And so this is the origin of quantum physics. And because biologically, we are made of biophotons. All matter is actually made of photons, and so when we meditate, we turn the light around and we're self-resonating the photons, and therefore we get this relativistic quantum dynamic. And that's been proven through the microtubules that the microtubules have a negative refractive index with the tubulin, and so you get a super radiance as a superluminal phonon signal, as Dr. Anirban Bandyopadhyay has now demonstrated. And so then with the weak measurement experiments, they've proven that this non-commutative non-locality is actually a gravitational force that's a repulsive force. And so once again, you have this in a double slit experiment. The trajectory of the particle as the quantum potential is being guided from the future by this negative frequency before it is squared into a energy measurement. And so you have a gravitational force that's a repulsive force due to this negative value. And it's one of the most interesting aspects of the weak measurement, because it implies the gravitational repulsion rather than attraction. So that proves anti-gravity at the foundation of reality from the negative entropy. So Chinese philosophy professor Patrick Edwin Morin slipped this point into Wikipedia, because he started out in physics at Stanford, and he points out that Planck was, when Planck converted to joules, the joules has the unit of seconds, and so then he was able to cancel out the seconds in the quantum frequency that's measured as the reduction of as h bar. So the Planck's constant is then reduced to h bar by assuming a symmetric cycle of time as a spatial measurement. And so Basil J. Hiley points out that it's only when you square Planck's constant are you able to then reveal this non-commutative time and frequency that's hidden within Planck's constant, because otherwise it got canceled out when Planck converted to joules for the h bar, the reduced form of Planck's constant. And that's why Richard Feynman missed this secret, as did Paul Dirac. It's only in the non-commutativity that you get the truth of reality, as Basil J. Hiley's figured out along with Alon Khan and Roger Penrose. So Penrose is relying on the de Broglie-Einstein relation, which is actually this law of phase harmony. And again, it's not taught in physics courses, as John G. Williamson points out. And so essentially you have this superluminal time reverse signal. It's a correlation that's active information, that's a new quality of energy, and it's gravitationally repulsive. So if this rocket is a particle or the matter, it's being guided from the future by this wave going the opposite direction as the phase velocity that's superluminal. And that's also negative entropy and anti-gravity. And so this also proves that there's no symmetric rest frame in as relativity claims, because light has an internal oscillation due to the gravitational mass of light, whereas in relativity they assume that light has no internal oscillation, and the internal oscillation of light is therefore this formless awareness as a protoconsciousness or active information. And that's what's astrophysicist Paul S. Wesson also relied on Louis de Broglie law of phase harmony to explain the fifth dimension, that the universe is actually a fifth dimensional black hole as a wormhole that also explains spiritual phenomenon, all types of spiritual phenomenon. So that's what's achieved through the quantum biology training, but it also explains why the ecological crisis has been occurring and accelerating as biological annihilation of life on Earth, because as Roger Penrose points out, since mass originates as frequency, therefore the gravitational entropy is it's the opposite of the entropy of matter, and so time is highly asymmetric and coherent at the origin of reality in the fifth dimension. And so this is the true origin of life from negative entropy as the negative frequency that's non-commutative, and non-local as anti-gravity information that's precognitive. And so Roger Penrose discusses how at the end of the universe all the matter goes into the black holes as a black hole singularity that then has Hawking radiation that then becomes the source of the next Big Bang as negative entropy from pure frequency, from the negative frequency. And Gerard de Hoof says this is the secret of all matter as the eternal black hole. So it's going on all the time in the fifth dimension, as Paul S. Wesson also explained. So that's why we have the ecological crisis accelerating today, but we can also access this secret truth of life as the secret truth of the universe. That's also anti-gravity through quantum biology. So I will leave it at that and exit the slide screen.